Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again. I am here today to review kind of a fan request, so there's just these certain days where I don't know what to review, and I just pick from a couple of things that I could review, and this was one of those days. I guess you could call them Wacky Wednesdays, which is like a throwback to this thing that they did at these summer camps that I went to where everyone dressed up in costumes and then they lined up for Wacky Wednesday, and whoever had the best costumes got a piece of candy. That was kind of funny. I did that like one time and it was just a complete failure. Like I think I just wore like it was this shirt. It was a black shirt with Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 duct taped to the shirt. So all it was just like that. And I think it was good that I did it though, because it was the only time in the history of going to these summer camps that I ever participated. And like, I don't know, it's like I'm glad that I just participated that one time and then didn't win anything. I mean, it's really weird too because they had like this bag full of candy. I mean, I edited the video of Wacky Wednesday, or it was part of the recess segment, and I edited that video specifically one year because it was a part of this big video of the whole summer camp summary. And I saw the candy in that bag. They had tons and tons of candy, pieces of candy. The kids only took one piece each. They had tons of candy. They could have given it to everyone in line. Honestly, I think what they should have done is let the winners choose first and then just give everyone else in line like a random piece of candy. Because then there's all these other kids who didn't even participate, so, they're not going to get any candy. So I think that's a better way of doing things. But anyway, that's completely irrelevant to this fucking video. You guys see, like, already that this movie wasn't very interesting to talk about, honestly. But what I did was I wanted the fans to participate and see what they wanted me to review out of a couple of choices, and I put up Sisu, Evil Dead Rise, Top 25 Comedies, which seems like a fun video but probably would have been a pain in the ass, so thanks for not choosing that one for today. And then there were two others, I can't remember, maybe just one other. And at first, two people, like, automatically vote Sisu. Like, immediately. Like, two people were just like, I have been waiting for this moment for 1,000,000 years. I wanted Marco to watch Sisu. And then, like, overnight, of course, in the middle of the night when everyone else is asleep, I was thinking about Meryl Streep for a second for some reason. When everyone else is asleep, there's just like these two creepy fans, and I'm not saying they're creepy like in a bad way, but they're just these two creepy guys waiting until the middle of the night so that they can vote for Evil Dead Rise. And that was pretty funny. Like, I woke up and it's like, oh shit, there's these two people who were like fucking, I don't know, sitting naked in this like dark room, like looking at the computer, like Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs, where he's sitting at the fucking computer naked, and that was one of the funniest scenes of that movie. He's just sitting there fully naked, and then you hear, help me in the background. Like, that's probably, unfortunately, like, these people who voted for Evil Dead Rise. Like, there is probably, I mean, wouldn't that be kind of interesting? I've heard a little bit about that, of like these certain killers, they're fans of these YouTubers, and then they're always like, oh, you see why this YouTuber is bad? You see why this YouTuber is problematic? I hope that happens with me, because then I'll just be like, wait a second, I don't care. Like, I have no association to people to tell them to do bad things, so I don't care. Like, I just do these videos and release them, and the fans that I do interact with, I know that they're not serial killers. So, that's my response. Like, if there's a future, Jeffrey Dahmer, like, around here, who's like a fan of mine, like, let me just tell you, I do not like you. You should not be a fan of mine. You can go watch, like, other crappy reviewers, like fucking the other anti-SJW reviewers, like fucking Geeks and Gamers and shit. Those fucking cringe, one-sided channels. Like, you can go watch that, but it just fuck off of my channel, future serial killer. So there was a tie, and I had to make a choice, because I don't want to review it like 6 o'clock in the evening. So I just spun a random wheel, and it chose Sisu. So right off the bat, I was already planning on watching and reviewing this movie. I was just going to kind of watch it and maybe just review it some rainy day, some random day of the year. But I'm glad that I got it over with, honestly, because I liked it okay. Like, I thought that it was exactly what I expected. And I think maybe that was my biggest problem with it, was like, I see so many movies nowadays and so many TV shows that it's like, I used to have this thing where I would be like, no, this movie's gonna suck, I'm not watching it, and then I might even be wrong. But nowadays, I just watch so much stuff that sort of frame of mind is just turned up to like the maximum degree. Because if I see something and I don't like it, I get really pissed off and I think about all the horrible things I'm going to say about it. Or if I like something, I think about, wow, what are all the things I'm going to say? Because it's harder to talk about a movie that you like. Even a movie that's just okay, it's harder to talk about. And this movie just just did exactly what I expected. Like, there were a few things I didn't expect, I guess, that were just kind of like there. But everything about this movie, like, from beginning to end, I was completely underwhelmed. The story is really simple. In fact, if I were to make a comparison, this is like if you took the opening 10 minutes of There Will Be Blood, where Daniel is silent and he's not talking, with the masterful dialogue, and he's mining, and he strikes oil, but then he breaks his leg or whatever, and he crawls through the whole desert to fucking tell people and to get help and to get money for the oil. Like, that was probably one of the coolest openings in a movie ever. And the music was like straight out of The Shining. I mean, that movie, I really like that movie. I really, really like that movie. Even though there are a lot of disappointing elements to it. Like, I really like that movie. But this is like if you stretch that opening out for an hour and a half, and you didn't have the music from The Shining, you had fucking Nordic Viking music, which, by the way, you guys will be very interested to know certain developments, personal developments, pretty soon. Well, I don't know how soon, but after I am feeling much better, which I am feeling better than yesterday, which is good, and so hopefully I keep on improving. So, yeah. this movie, it's about this miner. He's a gold miner. And he was a former soldier, and he had this breakdown where his family got killed, and, his whole life got destroyed, and he just turned into a killing machine like Rambo or John Wick or any of the other one-man armies. And he was fighting in the war, and they would just send him off by himself and kill people because they found that it wasn't good to reason with him because he was so out of his mind. And, it's that typical, like, John Wick, nobody story of, like, oh no, these bad guys messed with the wrong person. I wonder what's going to happen in the movie. And he gets gold. Oh yeah, he also has a dog, so that's another John Wick comparison. And he's taking his gold to the bank, and he's got a long ride to the bank, and then all of a sudden he comes across this Nazi company, and they even have some chicks. They have these women that they kidnapped, and I guess they're Nazi sex slaves. I mean, it's never really talked about very much. I mean, they say, like, oh, we have bitches and alcohol, like, we're doing just fine, but they don't really like, get into anything at all. It's just so bare bones, bare minimum, like, just nothing there to this movie and this story. And there's just these women and these drags and these rags, this fucking torn up clothing. And then they had this little, like, hint where this guy, like, zipped his pants back up, as if that's supposed to say, like, oh yeah, these guys are their sex slaves, like, I guess. And then another point, this soldier, I think he, like, tries to open her legs with his gun, but that's basically it. But, like, I feel like they would have done that to them anyway. Like, even if they were just prisoners, or if they were people they were taking somewhere to execute, or if they were criminals on the run and they were taking them back to prison, you could have still had both of those actions happen. And it would be like, oh, they're not sex slaves, but I guess they are. Like, it's really unclear. There's so many things in this movie that are just unclear because it's so simplistic that it's like they're not really going to explain anything. They're just going to let you watch this mindless action movie where it's like, this is everything that Safi used to say about why she didn't like video games. Like, I'd be like, Safi, why don't you play L.A. Noire? And she'd be like, no, video games are just games where you kill people and nothing else happens. I don't like that. And then I'd show her, like, fucking Uncharted or L.A. Noire, and she'd be like, yeah. She'd be disappointed that it didn't fit her agenda. And that's what this movie is, though. It's just so mindless and so bad in terms of just story, character. Like, it's really good on certain elements. It has really good action. It's basically, the Nazis, they want to steal his gold so that they can get out of the war. Like, they talk about it like this one time where they say, like, the Nazis are losing the war, so let's get that gold and get out. And it's like, okay, that's it? Like, are we not going to hear about this again? Probably not. This had all the fucking trademarks of that fucking Fearless Vampire Killers, where, like, nobody talked. You had to figure everything out for yourself, and it's like, people have compared this movie to Tarantino's movies. How the fuck could you compare this movie to Tarantino's movies? What is Tarantino most known for? I'll give you a hint. It's not characters being silent like they're mute and they can't speak. Tarantino is known for dialogue. If Tarantino had made this movie, the characters all would have talked the entire movie. None of these characters would just be these silent weirdos, or these people, these fucking Nazi NPCs who just say, "Get him, he's alive, shoot, fire, back up." You know, that's basically the amount of dialogue in this movie, the extent of the words that people say. And it's like, if Tarantino had done this movie, it would have been so much better. It would have had so much more to it. Like, there are so many things that you could have added to this movie to make it more interesting, to add more to the table. Because I don't mind that they ripped off all these other movies where it's about like a one-man army. I mind that they didn't bring anything new to the table. This character, this main character, let me look him up. I can't even remember how to pronounce the name. And why do they say it's 2022? It's 2023. Let's see. Who's the main guy? Tommy Corpy. So I'll just say Corpy. Which, Corpy is a cool name. That's a cool little nickname. That's kind of fun. Corpy is trash. Like, he is probably one of the weakest characters I've seen on screen the entire year so far. He doesn't talk the entire movie. Only at the very end does he talk at the bank. He says something to the clerk at the bank, dumps the gold out all over the bank desk, and I got to admit, like, the ending was pretty good. And I got to admit too, I would have liked to have seen a version of this movie where he does talk the whole movie, as well as the Nazis and other characters, you know. I was really, like, missing the humanity in this movie. Like, this movie was just so cold and so, like, bare bones, and just there was nothing there, like, except for action and violence. It's the equivalent of, like, oh, let's watch a 2-hour YouTube video of, like, a Call of Duty video game player getting his best kills. Like, ooh, look, this is my compilation of my best kill shots. Pew, pew, pew. That's what this is. Ooh, I got 30 kills in a row, but I don't have a girlfriend. Oh! That is the equivalent of this movie. It is like a complete and utter, like, just... this character, he's not very likable. I mean, the actions that he does a lot of good things, but then he has this dog. He basically fucks off with his dog. Like, he's just like, who cares? Like, at a certain point, he straight up abandons his dog. After he fixes himself up, and, you know, he does all the typical action movie things where it's like, ooh, I have a wound, I'm gonna fix it up myself and scream in pain, and I'm gonna look really cool and masculine. Yeah, I eat beef jerky, bitch. Like, that's basically what this guy was like. Like, he had no character at all. He's just this caricature of, like, John Wick and all the other characters who have already done this story before. And so the whole thing with his dog, where he doesn't even show very much emotion to his dog or his horse. Or I guess he kind of does to his horse a little tiny bit, but not really anything at all, though. I mean, he acts like, and then he looks over at his horse, and then he kind of shows a little bit of emotion to the quote-unquote sex slaves that he helps out at a certain point in the movie. Other than that, he's just a complete zombie. Like, he's like a a pod person almost, except at least pod people are kind of interesting because they're so weird that, you can't look away. This guy is like a piece of cardboard formed into a character. And so the movie is really, really like, you know what happens. The Nazis want his gold. They try to kill him. We think, oh, how's he going to get out of that? Oh, very easily. And then he kills some Nazis. And then they try to kill him again. And again and again and again. And he just kills them the whole movie. They learn about his legend. He saves the girls. They become kind of like a little gang of girls who are going to F your shit up. And, I guess that was cool, but they didn't really talk very much either at all. With them, it was really bad because they just focused on this one girl. And like, oh, I know she's going to be a leader. She's going to be some sort of important character. It was very, very, like, obvious. And she gave this terrible speech where she basically told the audience the message of the movie because it's like, I don't know, like, I think that dialogue could be a lot better than this. Like, she literally said the whole message of this movie in this little speech. It was terrible. It was awful. It was so bad. And I thought, don't do that. If you're making a movie, do not say the message of your movie in a speech, no matter what. And then the way she talked, too, she did not talk like a person of the time period of the 30s or 40s. The whole cast, that none of them seemed like they were in the 40s or 30s. They just seemed like people from nowadays playing dress up. And it looked pretty good. I mean, we'll talk about what it looks like near the end, because then you guys will be like, oh shit, he's right. Fuck. and you can even look it up to verify it too. I promise. But yeah, I mean, nothing really else happens. Like, that's the whole movie. And then at the end, he wins. He has his gold. He goes to the bank. And whatever. Who knows what happens next? I mean, why would we even care? I mean, that's the thing. This movie, they could have done so many things with it to make it better. They could have given all these Nazis characters. But that's something that they probably wouldn't want to do, because it's like, oh, do we really want to give Nazis character? Do we really want to give them human traits? Because they have this whole story where they want the gold so they can get out of the war. But then we have no story about them as people at all. And then you have a movie from the 30s called Stagecoach, or the 40s, I can't remember. Stagecoach is probably one of the best movies ever made. Almost the whole movie is just these characters talking to each other and learning more about each other. And that movie is like a masterpiece. All on its own. And it's certainly a masterpiece in comparison to this. And I just think, like, if they had looked at that movie and just seen how, this is how you build character. This is what you do. You have people talk. You have people say things to each other through dialogue. If they had done that, it would have been such a massive improvement on this movie, rather than just, kill that guy. He's almost dead. Shoot him. Get over there. That's the dialogue in this movie. I mean, it's almost like it was written by the main character. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I could just imagine him sitting by a campfire, scribbling this down on a piece of paper and being like, I think this is really good. I'm gonna give this story to someone. I don't need the money, so I'm just gonna donate this story to charity. So, I'm trying to think of what else to talk about, honestly. It's not that I didn't like the movie, it's just that it hit that exact note that I expected. It was just so flat. It was so flat. But at least it was very well made. That's the part that really disappointed me, though, because I thought, you know what? The guy who made this movie, it was his first movie. You know, he'll get better. He'll make better movies. I can't wait to see where he goes next. And then I look it up. This movie was made by a guy who's made like multiple movies. And those movies look a lot better than this. Like, they look like they have a lot more going on. They're very popular movies, too. So that's the thing about this movie, is like, this feels like a playing it safe movie. Like, if you just wanted to make a quick buck and make, like, a trendy movie, I could see that's the perfect description for this movie. Like, yeah, that's what you should do. Make a Sisu, get some monies, and then make a real movie. But don't pretend like this movie's the savior to movies, because it's not. John Wick 4 was way better than this. Scream 6 was way better than this. Super Mario Bros. Was better. Let's see. Renfield was way better. Guardians 3 was better. Dungeons and Dragons was better. Champions was better. And Champions had every cliche in the book. I remember Champions when I talked about that, and I said, even though this movie is basically like a plot point by plot point sports movie cliche, it was just so good for some reason. This movie was not very good. It was just okay. It's very much in the middle. In fact, I think I have it one point below 7. So it's number 8 out of 14. It is one movie into the bad category. But I guarantee it will not be on the worst movies of the year. I mean, no way. So finally, and I know that this might be disappointing, but that's just what happens, You can't guarantee that someone will like or dislike a movie. What if I reviewed Evil Dead Rise and I had hated that or something, Like, you can't guarantee that anyone will like anything nowadays, especially me, because my expectations and my opinions are constantly, like, evolving. And, there's movies, like, from a year ago that I would never watch again. But back when I reviewed them, I thought they were really good, And then there's movies like 1917, where I saw that at first and I hated it, and I completely dissected it and said, it is a bad movie in terms of logic, reasoning, all the plot, the story is terrible. But if you just turn that off and just experience the movie, it is one of the best movies ever made because of the emotion and the filmmaking. It's very, very good. This movie, it's just exactly what I expected and what anyone would have expected just reading the plot synopsis. So, the main thing that this movie reminded me of, and this is going to make you guys cry. I used to watch this channel called Indie Mogul. They had all these videos on how to do special effects at home for very cheap budgets. And they had this cool thing where viewers submitted requests for effects that they would do. And then they do this thing where they would spin a budget wheel. And then whatever budget it landed on, they had to do the effect within that budget range. And I thought, that's a really fun idea for a YouTube channel. And I watched it, and the main guy, Eric, He was a really, really good YouTuber. And he was serious about filmmaking too, and very, very good at doing the special effects. Not as good as the people who did Sisu, granted, but he was very good. But then he left, and this guy replaced him. He was just totally, like, not the same. He was very, very, like, boring, meh. He was just so typical and so generic. He's like one of those guys that should just be behind the scenes and not in front of the camera. And he did this thing where, or at the end of every Indie Mogul video, they would also show the effect being used in like this cool little skit. And with Eric, the skits were very fun and funny, but with this other guy, they were just totally cringe, cheesy, queer, just not very good. And he did this whole movie, or it was like a mini-series of the Fallout video game, where he made all these Fallout video game effects, and then he used it to make this little mini-series. And I'm not kidding you guys when I say that it looks exactly like this movie. You know, that's what this movie reminds me of, is like an amateur filmmaker on YouTube who's just testing things out and making like a short video showing like, look, this is how I utilized these techniques that I taught you. This is how I utilized these effects that I showed you. You know, like it didn't. That's what this whole movie reminded me of, honestly. In a bad way. Because I thought a filmmaker, he would have come up with a lot more to go to this story. A lot more substance, a lot more meat and potatoes instead of just... This movie is like... You're supposed to have chicken dinner. That's chicken, gravy, mashed potatoes, corn, or any other vegetable. Well, what if you took off the gravy, you took off the chicken, and you took off the corn, and all you were left with was a little scoop of mashed potatoes? Would you be satisfied with that? Would you say that's a really good meal just because the mashed potatoes were perfectly made? No, of course not. Like, who would? A weirdo? Like, you gotta have something with the mashed potato. Like, anything. But no, you just have mashed potato scooped out onto a plate, and you're supposed to be satisfied with that. To me, that is exactly what Sisu is. Take mashed potato, put it on a plate, and eat up. Or fucking cream of wheat with no milk and sugar. You know? And overall, it was okay. I guess I would recommend it if you really, really wanted to watch it. You know, there were some weird things about it too, like in terms of style choices. Like, they had chapters in the movie, which was kind of pointless in my opinion. I mean, that really didn't do anything for the movie. They had this kind, instead of having like music that would be from back then, they had this like modern Viking Skyrim music. Because it was more about, like, I guess, some sort of a Finnish legend of a immortal person or something. Like, I don't know. And I felt like, honestly, it reminded me of The Great Gatsby. You know, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio, where they're playing rap music in the fucking 50s or whatever, 40s. That's what this reminded me of. So, overall, like, I just felt like this movie was almost a complete miss with me. It was enjoyable, I guess, but just for the one time only. You know, I'd much rather just play this as a video game, you know, like, but even video games have more going on than this. Like the Wolfenstein games, the ones that people say like, oh, all that is just killing. I highly disagree. If you compare this movie with that game, it had a hell of a lot going on compared to this movie especially. So please like this video, comment, tell me what you thought of the movie. Honestly, I'm going to forget about this movie until the end of the year when I mention it on the top best and worst. Or maybe I won't even mention it because there will be so many movies on the list. And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest reviews. I also put up another poll. So after Safi is finished with Monk, I kind of want to start a new TV series. Something where it's shorter than Leave It to Beaver, and you guys will look forward to those reviews. So I put up like 4 or 5 options for that if you'd like to go vote for that. I'm just going to leave it up, and then I think Saturday or Sunday is when Safi finishes Monk, and I think I'll make that like the deadline. So goodbye everybody, see you soon.